least 6 persons killed following attack by suspected terrorists on 2 separate communities in Plateau State. Inspector General of Police approves investigation into INEC Commissioner's role in Adamawa State supplementary poll. President-elect Bola Tinubu arrives Abuja from France after about a month outside the country. And on the foreign scene, more countries move to extract thousands of their citizens from Sudan's capital, Khartoum, amidst intense fighting. Good evening. This is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Tunde Ido. At least 6 persons were today confirmed dead after suspected terrorists attacked residents in 2 separate communities of Plateau State. It was guarded that while 2 persons were killed in Wering Village, Kuru community, just south local government area, by the fleeing terrorists, 4 persons were killed in Ipiang community, Bakin Ladi local government area of the state. The 2 separate incidents occurred yesterday night. Spokesman for the military task force in charge of maintaining peace in the state, Captain Oya James, confirmed the killing of 2 persons in Just South community. He said officers were immediately deployed there, but unfortunately 1 person was already shot dead before they got to the community. The traditional ruler of Aghara, David Obadofin, in Kababunu local government area of Kogi State, has died in the custody of his abductors. Obadofin was said to have passed on last Thursday, 12 days after he was kidnapped, when he could no longer withstand the torture of his captivity. However, his co-abductee, Temidayo Elewa, has been set free, with family members picking her up at Obajana, the cement town in Lokoja local government area. It was gathered that when the abductors noticed that Obadofin was becoming too weak, they agreed to collect 2 million naira for the release of the 2 victims and started mounting pressure for the payment. While they blindfolded Temidayo and separated her to a different location, the monarch died before the ransom could be delivered. 3 persons have been killed in a violent clash between the Abuja indigenous people and Hausa youths in Gwarimpa 3rd Avenue. According to reports, the fight broke out over the weekend when a group of Hausa youths who reportedly sold hard drugs attempted to burgle and rob the household of the councillor of the ward. The action of the Hausa youths infuriated the Abuja indigenous people, and the situation quickly escalated into a full-blown clash. Eyewitnesses reported that the violence resulted in the death of 3 people, with several others injured and cars vandalized. Security personnel were called in to quell the unrest over the weekend, and the situation was temporarily brought under control. However, social media videos revealed that fighting resumed today, but the police were working to restore order in the area. In other news, the Nigeria Police Force says Inspector General of Police Usman Baba has sanctioned an investigation into resident Electoral Commissioner Hudu Yunusa Ari's role in the recently held supplementary Adamawa State governorship election. This comes after the Commission's appeal to the IGP seeking an investigation and possible prosecution of Mr. Yunusa Ari over allegation of misconduct. The first public relations officer, Olumuyiwa Adejobi, in a statement said the police was in receipt of the letter from INEC detailing the alleged impropriety of the actions of Mr. Yunusa Ari. Mr. Adejobi noted that the commission called on the police to investigate and possibly prosecute the REC for his actions. He added that the Inspector General has directed an investigative team to work in collaboration with INEC to expedite action on the contents of the letter. It will be recalled that Mr. Yunusa Ari allegedly usurped the role of the returning officer to prematurely announce the All Progressive Congress candidate Aishatu Binani Dahiru as the winner while collation was ongoing. The declaration led to uproar, resulting in the temporary suspension of the exercise. Ultimately, incumbent Governor Amadu Fintiri of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, emerged as the winner. Police brutality is sometimes used to refer to various human rights violations by police. While this menace has persisted in Africa, our most populous country seems to have had it to feel. In this report, Western Spring Television News takes a look at the reoccurring cases of police brutality and what Nigerians think of the recent response from the police force. We'll bring you the full details of that report in our subsequent bulletin. Elsewhere, Air Peace has disclosed its readiness to evacuate stranded Nigerians in Sudan for free if the federal government can get the airline to a safe and secure airport in any of the neighboring countries bordering Sudan. This was disclosed in a statement today by the chairman and chief executive officer of the airline, Allen Oyema. He noted that Nigerian students and others stranded in the war-racked nation urgently needs help. Mr. Oyema said he is compelled to help because Nigeria cannot afford to lose her citizens in the country, adding that it will be his own commitment to making sure the stranded Nigerians in the war-torn country are safe. The federal government earlier said it was making preparations to evacuate about 5,500 stranded Nigerians out of Sudan through the Egyptian town of Luxor. Meanwhile, Chairman CEO Nigerians in Diaspora Commission NIDCAM Abike Dabiri Erewa has encouraged Nigerian students in conflict-hit Sudan to remain in their universities to avert danger. The NIDCAM boss explained that the Nigerian mission has informed the students of a point of connection where buses will convey them. In the meantime, Italian ambassador to Nigeria, Stephanie De Leo, says the migration of people aids the growth and development of host and countries of origin. The envoy said this during a news agency of Nigeria forum held at the agency's headquarters in Abuja. Mr. Lowe said no one could stop the migration of people because it is a boosting element in the economy and international relations. He said Nigerians living in Italy are talented, think a step ahead of others, and are one of the largest African communities living in Italy. The ambassador also identified fashion and art as platforms that will strengthen the already existing cooperation between Nigeria and Italy. He added that collaboration in the art will also give both countries a platform to exchange global best practices.
Is to offer legal structures to increase the legal migration and also to fight those who exploit people to get money out of people who want to travel. So it's a double standard activity. Improve the legal structures and the legal channels and fight those who want to exploit migrants. So we are not putting our finger on the migrants, we're putting the finger on those who exploit the interest to migrate for personal reasons and crime-related activities. So what we can say is that Italy hosts the biggest Nigerian community in the European Union. We have more than 150,000 Nigerians in Italy that are increasingly integrated in our structure of the social structure, and the third and fourth generation now is of course becoming Italian citizens. And for me this is an important bridge towards Nigeria, because these Nigerians who live in Italy can create cultural bridges, economic bridges, help Italians to understand Nigeria. Also Italy itself, it's a kind of bridge in the Mediterranean Sea, and we don't want to see people drowning and getting inside the sea. So Italy is trying to set up a system where there could be vocational training to stay in Nigeria or to move to Italy, or even to provide for Italian companies who want to settle in Nigeria workforce that is qualified and can be also employed in Nigeria itself. So as Italians, we have a vast knowledge of migration issues, and in this case Italy is a superpower, because when it goes on fashion we play a major role. And I must say that we can learn from the talents here in Nigeria. We are known for the beauties of the centuries that have passed. You know, we go to Rome, you see the Baroque, you see the painters of the Middle Ages. But if we look at modern art is here. So we have to put together the talent of the people that we have here, and with the experience and the knowledge that we have in Italy. So I'm very happy if we can find ways to put art and fashion from Italy and Nigeria together, maybe creating some opportunities to make people meet.
The President-elect Bola Tinubu today arrived Abuja from France after about a month outside the country. Senator Tinubu's flight touched down at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, and was welcomed by a crowd of supporters. The President-elect arrived from France in the company of his wife, Oluremi Tinubu, at the presidential wing of the airport to a rousing welcome by party faithfuls and supporters who had been anticipating his arrival. The Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima was also among supporters and top members of the All Progressive Congress APC who received Senator Tinubu. The President-elect has been out of the country for the past month, first visiting France before heading to Saudi Arabia for Lesser Hajj. His trip had elicited speculations and controversy about the state of his health. And in Lagos State, one person has died as officials of the State Traffic Management Authority rescued 3 severely injured victims in an accident at Moshalashi roundabout in the Yanokpaja area of Lagos. The agency disclosed this in a statement today by the Director of Public Affairs and Enlightenment Department of LASMA, Adebayo Taufik, noting that the victims are 2 males and a female. He, however, said one of the 3 accident victims its operatives rescued died on the way to the hospital. It added that a preliminary investigation carried out revealed that overspeeding was the cause of the accident. You're watching News at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come, more countries move to extract thousands of their citizens from Sudan's capital, Khartoum, amidst intense fighting. We'll bring you more on this when we return.
On 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kuan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history.
Welcome back. This is still news at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. At least 6 persons killed following attack by suspected terrorists on 2 separate communities in Plateau State. Inspector General of Police approves investigation into INEC Commissioner's role in Adamawa State supplementary poll. President-elect Bola Tinubu arrives Abuja from France after about a month outside the country. On the foreign scene, more countries move to extract thousands of their citizens from Sudan's capital, Khartoum, amidst intense fighting. The National Population Commission has said its server is intact and ready to be deployed for the upcoming 2023 Population and Houses Census exercise. This is according to a statement by the Commission spokesperson Isiaka Yahaya. The assurance came following a viral video where its staff in Niger State, Sanusi Megida, said the NPC server was hacked, which led to the postponement of the local government areas level training of the supervisors and enumerators for the census. Mr. Yahya in the statement, however, said the information was false, adding that Mr. Megida was facing a disciplinary action for searching for misinformation. He added that as a staff in the local government area office of the NPC, Mr. Megida has limited knowledge about the NPC server or its workability. And here in Osun State, less than 2 months before its inauguration, different reactions have trailed the alleged support of Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke for the emergence of member-elect representing Odo-Otin State constituency, Wale Egbedun, as Speaker of the 8th Osun State House of Assembly. Speaking on Morning Spring, a Western Spring Television News and Current Affairs programs, Senior Special Assistant to the Governor and Director of Osun PDP Media, Oladele Bamiji, maintained that the House leadership remains up to members-elect, while human rights activist and political commentator Wahid Saka described the controversies as an unnecessary distraction. Emmanuel Ujuadugele has more on the story. We'll bring you that story later. The Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has faulted the Nigerian Lightning Safety and Research Center, NLSRC, a non-governmental organization, for issuing an unauthorized thunderstorm alert. The NLSRC had on April 15 tweeted a warning alert to Nigerians saying thunderstorms are expected across the country in May. However, in a statement, NIMET said it is not the responsibility of NLSRC to issue such alert, adding that the NGO has committed an offense. NIMET said the public should disregard the information issued by NLSRC. In response, NLSRC told NIMET that it does not intend to compete with the agency on its statutory obligation. The organization said the alert was solely for the education and awareness of Nigerians. And on the foreign scene, countries around the world are racing to extract thousands of their citizens from Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Millions of Sudanese, thousands of foreign diplomats and aid workers and students have found themselves in a war zone on April 15 and have been trying to leave office. Fighter jets have bombed the capital and the main airport has been at the center of the fighting. At least 2 convoys involved in the evacuation have come under attack, including one carrying Qatari embassy staff and another carrying French citizens.
Foreign nations are in a rush to get their citizens out of Sudan as rival military factions battle in the capital Khartoum, where millions of residents are trapped inside their homes, many running low on water and food, and many houses lacking electricity. The fighting, which broke out on April 15 between the army and the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) paramilitary group, has triggered a humanitarian crisis, killed at least 420 people, and left behind charred tanks, gutted buildings and shops that have been looted and touched. Over the weekend, foreign governments began landing aircraft and organizing convoys in Khartoum to pull out their nationals. The United States says special forces using MH-47 Chinook helicopters swept into Sudan's battle-stricken capital from a U.S. base in Djibouti, spending just 1 hour on the ground to bring out fewer than 100 people. United Kingdom Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on Twitter on Sunday that members of his country's armed forces had completed a complex and rapid evacuation of British diplomats and their families from Sudan. Germany and France announced Sunday that they had begun evacuating their nationals and those from other countries. Other European countries, including Italy, the Netherlands, and Greece, also said they were planning rescue efforts. A French plane carrying about 100 people of multiple nationalities landed in Djibouti, according to French President Emmanuel Macron, with a second flight of another 100 people expected to leave Sunday evening. Turkey began rescue operations at dawn Sunday via road from the southern city of Wad Madani, but the effort was postponed from one site in Khartoum after explosions near a mosque designated as the assembly area, the embassy said on Twitter. Egypt, which said it had more than 10,000 citizens in Sudan, urged those in cities other than Khartoum to head to consular offices in Port Sudan and Wadi Halfa in the north for evacuation. Other countries successfully evacuated people on Saturday. More than 150 people, mostly citizens of Gulf countries, as well as Egypt, Pakistan, and Canada, were evacuated by sea to the Saudi Arabian port of Jeddah. On Sunday, long lines of United Nations vehicles and buses were seen leaving Khartoum, heading east towards Port Sudan on the Red Sea, carrying citizens from all over the world, as Sierra Leonean evacuees said. There have been desperate calls for help from many foreign students from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, who are also stuck in Khartoum, a city of some 6 million people. A Nigerian student association in Sudan called on its government to conduct an immediate rescue mission, saying many students had chosen to flee. In response to this plea, the director of special duties of the National Emergency Management Agency and chairman of NEMA's Committee for the Evacuation of the Stranded Nigerians from Sudan, Dr. Unimode Bandele, said the federal government was meeting with government officials in Egypt on how to move Nigerians out of Sudan through Egypt. Meanwhile, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, in an interview with Channels Television on Sunday, said the government had concluded arrangements to evacuate 5,500 Nigerians in Sudan by road. According to him, Nigeria, for security reasons, will get authorization from the Sudanese government before the evacuation.
So we're working very, very hard round the clock with our embassy in Khartoum to try and evacuate those Nigerians that want to be evacuated, students and also ordinary civilians. The big challenge is to get, first of all, we've arranged with the embassy to have a pickup point where they can, converge. And the big challenge, of course, is to get a safe passage out of Khartoum.
Thousands of Sudanese have fled the fighting in Khartoum and elsewhere, UN agencies said, but millions are sheltering in their homes amid explosions, gunfire and looting, without adequate electricity, food or water. Temitope Ajijalaoluwaola, Western Spring Television.
In the meantime, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres today warned that the violence between warring parties in Sudan could engulf the whole region and beyond. Mr. Guterres told in a meeting of the UN Security Council on multilateralism that the situation in Sudan continues to worsen. At least 427 people have been killed and almost 4,000 wounded in 10 days of fighting between forces loyal to two rival generals. Mr. Guterres added that he was in constant contact with the parties to the conflict and have called on them to de-escalate tensions and to return to the negotiating table. Meanwhile, Britain has requested an emergency meeting of the Security Council on Sudan, which is expected to take place tomorrow.
In April, hundreds of people have been killed and thousands injured. The violence must stop. It risks a catastrophic conflagration within Sudan that could engulf the whole region and beyond. I strongly condemn the indiscriminate bombardment of civilian areas, including healthcare facilities. And I call on the parties to stop combat operations in densely populated areas and to allow unhindered humanitarian aid operations. Civilians must be able to access food, water, and other essential supplies and evacuate from combat zones. I am in constant contact with the parties to the conflict, and I've called on them to de-escalate tensions and to return to the negotiating table. We will continue our efforts with our partners to secure a permanent halt to the fighting as soon.
Elsewhere, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov today chaired the United Nations Security Council meeting held at the UN headquarters in New York. Mr. Lavrov accused the United States-led NATO of taking actions damaging the multilateralism, stating that Washington was trying to change multilateralism for unilateralism. Meanwhile, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said multilateralism is the heartbeat of the organization, adding that multilateralism and UN mediation led to the Ukraine export grain deal. Mr. Guterres further stated that it was time to deepen many multilateral institutions to find common solutions to common challenges. Tensions continue to rise between Russia and the United States over Moscow's invasion of Ukraine and deepening diplomatic rows.
Clearly and openly, the International Monetary Fund has morphed into a tool for the achievement of the goals of the United States and their allies, including goals of a military nature, in a desperate attempt to assert their domination by punishing their insubordinates. The United States has taken the path of destroying globalization, which for many years they have taunted, they have raised up as the highest benefit of all of humanity, advancing the multilateral system, global economic system. Washington and its Western subordinates leverage those rules every time they need to justify illegitimate attempts against those who base their policies in line with international law and those who abandon the parochial interest of the global billion.
We face unprecedented and interlocking crises, but the multilateral system is under greater strain than at any time since the creation of the United Nations. Tensions between major powers are at an historic high. So are the risks of conflict through misadventure or miscalculation. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, in violation of the United Nations Charter and international law, is causing massive suffering and devastation to the country and its people, and adding to the global economic dislocation triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic.
In the meantime, China has said it respects the status of former Soviet member states as sovereign nations after comments by its envoy to Paris triggered an uproar amongst European capitals. Several EU foreign ministers had said comments by Ambassador Liu Shaye, in which he appeared to question the sovereignty of Ukraine and other former Soviet states, were unacceptable and had asked Beijing to clarify its stance. The Chinese Foreign Ministry stated that Beijing respected the status of the former Soviet member states as sovereign nations following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said China has been objective and impartial on issues of sovereignty. And in Australia, the government has released its Defence Strategic Review, which will see the country's biggest defence shake-up since World War II. The review shows Sydney prioritizes long-range precision strike capability, domestic production of guided weapons and diplomacy. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, while unveiling the review, called it the most significant work that has been done since the Second World War, and his government will act on it. On its recommendations, the review revealed that the United States was no longer the only leader of the Indo-Pacific, noting that intense competition between the US and China was defining the region and that the major power competition had potential for conflict.
This represents a document for today and tomorrow. It is the most significant work that's been done since the Second World War, looking in a comprehensive way at what is needed. It demonstrates that in a world where challenges to our national security are always evolving, we cannot fall back on old assumptions. At its core, all of this is making Australia more self-reliant, more prepared and more secure in the years ahead.
The defence posture that we have had for the last few decades has served our nation well. But in the circumstances that we now face, that defence posture is no longer fit for purpose. And so today, for the first time in 35 years, we are recasting the mission.
Still ahead, Otedola confirms acquisition of 5.52% stake in Transcorp PLC. We have more on this and other business stories after the break. Please stay with us.
Ahmadu Bello, Prince Royal, was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate in the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness and participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white supremacist in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 Naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Thank you for staying with us and welcome back. Moving over to some business stories. The National Bureau of Statistics has disclosed that a total of 222.6 million telephone subscribers were in Nigeria as of the end of 2022. The Bureau disclosed this in its report for the last quarter of 2022 released today. The data indicated an increase of 27.1 million subscribers over the 195.5 million subscribers recorded at the end of 2021. The report showed that the figure for the last quarter of 2022 represented a 13.87% rise in voice subscription on a year-on-year basis. On a quarter-on-quarter basis, the report showed that growth stood at 4.89%. It also recorded a total of 154.9 million active internet subscribers at the end of 2022 compared to 142 million recorded at the end of 2021. Chairman of Gerugu Power, Femi Otedola, has confirmed his acquisition of a 5.52% stake in Transcorp PLC. The development makes the billionaire businessman the second largest shareholder of the company. There have been reports that the acquisition was consummated between an entity owned by Mr. Otedola and the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON. Confirming the completion of the deal in a tweet today, Mr. Otedola said he looked forward to working with the board and management of Transcorp to elevate the company to greater heights. According to Transcorp's latest audited results, the only other shareholder with over 5% ownership of the company is the United Bank for Africa Nominees, which owns about 9.25% of the company as of December 31st, 2022. The acquisition further places Mr. Otedola above Tony Elumelu, the chairman of Transcorp, who owns a 2.06% stake in the company as of December 31st, 2022. South Korea has formally restored Japan to its list of countries it gives preferential treatment in trade 3 years after the neighbors downgraded each other's trade status amidst a diplomatic row driven by historical grievances. In announcing the move through a government gazette, South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy also said Seoul will further restrict technology and industrial exports to Russia and its ally Belarus. After years of friction, Seoul and Tokyo are working to repair relations as they tighten their three-way security cooperation with Washington to counter the threat posed by North Korea. South Korean officials expect Tokyo to restore Seoul as a favored trade partner as well, but foresee that steps will take more time based on the procedures to revise Japan's export regulations. In September 2019, South Korea dropped Japan from its whitelist of countries receiving fast-track approvals in trade, reacting to a similar move by Tokyo. Elsewhere, Credit Suisse says 61.2 billion Swiss francs left the bank in the first 3 months of the year. It came as the lender reported what are expected to be its last ever financial results after its forced sale to rival Swiss bank UBS, which is expected to be completed soon. Credit Suisse flagship wealth management division saw the amount of assets it managed drop to 502.5 billion francs at the end of March, almost 29% lower than the same period last year. Credit Suisse clients started pulling money out of the bank after it was caught up in the market turmoil that followed the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in the United States in March. And from the exciting world of sports, Super Eagles striker Victor Osimhen has said Napoli fans have waited long enough for the Serie A title and that is their turn to celebrate. Napoli edged closer to the Italian top-flight title after beating Juventus 1-0 away yesterday. A stoppage-time goal from Giacomo Rasparodi sealed the win for Napoli, and the win took Luciano Spalletti's side to 17 points ahead of second-place Lazio. A win for Napoli against Salernitana, and if Lazio fail to beat Inter, we'll see Osimhen and his teammates crowned champions. Osimhen still leads the top-scoring chart with 21 goals. The last time Napoli were crowned champions of Italy was in 1990 under the guidance of late Argentina football great Diego Maradona. In the meantime, police in Turin today said they had fined 171 Juventus fans and banned them from their stadium following racist chants leveled at Inter Milan striker Romelu Lukaku. During the April 4th first leg of the Italian Cup semi-final between Juventus and Inter Milan, Lukaku was subjected to monkey chants by some Juventus fans in what his representatives called hostile and disgusting racist abuse. In a brief statement, Turin police cited racist chants during the semi-final, but they did not provide details about the fines nor say how long the stadium ban would last. Days after the match, the Italian Football Federation handed Juventus a one-match stand closure for the racist chant from the majority of fans in that section, but it was overturned on appeal. Lukaku was suspended for 1 match after picking up 2 yellow cards, the second for a goal celebration in front of Juventus fans after a stoppage-time penalty that secured Inter a 1-1 draw. The Belgian striker held up his finger to his mouth and told Juventus supporters to shut up. However, that suspension was revoked by the FIGC after an angry backlash, allowing Lukaku to play in the second leg of the semi-finals in Milan on Wednesday. And in England, Vincent Kompany waved away questions regarding Chelsea's interest in him taking over the summer, insisting he will not stir up speculation after a brilliant campaign with Burnley. The former Manchester City captain, who picked up the Manager of the Year prize at the EFL Awards, has guided Burnley straight back to the Premier League, having arrived at a club last summer that was increasingly unsure of itself. company has since been linked with a host of jobs, with the Belgian widely seen as one of the brightest young managerial talents in the game. Emerging as a shock candidate on Chelsea's shortlist to replace Graham Potter, who they sacked at the start of the month, company did not entertain the question at the Champions Award.
Been linked with other jobs in the Premier League is a suggestion of just how good you've done at Burnley.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer to this. I just do my job, and I'm happy. I'm happy with I'm happy when I'm able to do my job.
Even if someone was to come to you and say, Vincent, we want you to come and manage our club, would there be a part of you that wants to remain loyal to Burnley and see how far you can take the club?
Yeah, but I made a decision very early on in my career as a coach to never participate in speculation. So I can tell you anything you want about my job now, and you can see I've got a smile on my face, and yeah, every day is a new challenge, and that's.
Head coach Unai Emery says he is comfortable with the pressure which comes with growing expectations and wants his players to embrace it. Emery urged his Aston Villa team to embrace the pressure of chasing a European spot as the league season approaches the climax. The Spaniard has effected a remarkable turnaround, having been appointed in October with the club in 14th, just 3 points above the Premier League relegation zone. On the back of their current 9-match unbeaten run, in which they have taken 23 points, they have risen to 6th place and are in contention to play in Europe for the first time since 2010. Having previously managed at Sevilla, Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal, Emery is no stranger to European football, and he is relishing the challenge of securing a top 6 finish for Villa.
For me now it's the same like when I arrived here. It's one process I have to do, and of course each match, each week, each month is very important to try to build, to create, to help improving everything like my experiences gave me. I want to do here, but it's not the time to speak about our dreams, how they can come, because we have to create, and really to go to Europe, of course, is our objective, but this year is being difficult, and now we are candidate to get a European position at the end of the season, because we deserve it and because our process was going very good. But the reality is still difficult to achieve it.
And that's all of this hour. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. At least 6 persons were today confirmed dead after suspected terrorists attacked residents in 2 separate communities of Plateau State. The Nigeria Police Force says Inspector General of Police Usman Baba has sanctioned an investigation into resident Electoral Commissioner Hudu Yunusa Ari's role in the recently held supplementary Adamawa State governorship election. The President-elect Bola Tinubu today arrived Abuja from France after about a month outside the country. And on the foreign scene, countries around the world are racing to extract thousands of their citizens from Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Thanks for viewing and watching. I am Tunde Ido. Good evening.